Spoilers ahead from Season 3 of Guild Wars 2. If you guys haven't played Season 3 or the latest expansion, please do so before watching this video. You have been warned. I don't know what I was expecting from this chapter or Season 3, but it wasn't this. The first chapter pulled me right back into the story and was even better in some instances than the introduction during the base story of the expansion. The first episode came as no real shock as an honoring to Air's life. It was beautiful and sad all at once. If there was one matter I both liked and disliked about this chapter, it was the retelling of the book Edge of Destiny by one of the Norn there. It was important to some of what was happening in the episode, especially given what Ritlock did with helping form a new guild instead of keeping Destiny's Edge. However, I've read the book twice now and have most of it pretty well in my memory when playing the game. I was curious to what that line would do, and thus I clicked on it to find it was a summary of the entire book. Yeah. Now, having it there is not a bad thing. For people who haven't read the book, it is a great way to learn the events of how the original guild was founded and what led to the start of the game. However, we also get some of that from Tehran during one of the storylines in the original game now, since they've redone some of that. So do we really need a full summary of the book? Doesn't that make it so that people don't want to buy the book? The second episode was a blast. I started solving the puzzle and actually really wanted to solve it, but then I saw another option once I failed the fourth part and wondered what it would do. Yeah, I didn't read any of the achievements before playing any of the chapters, and so I clicked the option, and it was sad that afterwards I couldn't solve the puzzle again because Tammy had already gone through and solved it. Thank you, Tammy. You're amazing, and at least it's a way to go around the puzzle for times that you really don't want to solve it. Yeah. The puzzle was great to see, and I look forward to actually solving it in the next playthrough that I do. Now, with the episode, there was a lot I liked seeing. It tied into the story introduced in the expansion wonderfully, especially with the energy or power going into Glunt's egg. I also really enjoyed seeing the Pact enter, even if it was just for a short time, and them offering the marshal position to the commander. I loved the lines of the dialogue there about what they really wanted from the new leader of the Pact and how the commander just turned it down after learning this. That was just amazing. I mean, yeah, desk job. When the player is stuck behind a desk, I can not see that ever happening. Episode 3. Well, I loved the start of this episode and the introduction to the new map with the cutscene, and how it led into investigating what happened. Through most of this episode, I kept getting distracted with the events happening on the new map. It took a good few hours to finally complete it and move on to the next episode. This isn't a bad thing for the game, but it was for the story because it broke it up for me. This was more my fault than anything else, however. Now, with episode 4. 2 words. Event failed. I would like to see what happened if this event was successful, but by the time I played this episode, the third chapter had been out for a while, and we had only a few people trying to run this one event. Most people on the map were more interested in the major group events. Plus, I also main a Revenant, and while we do have one ranged weapon, I tend not to use it, so I ended up chasing the enemy all over, trying to land one hit on them. It didn't help matters. I was running a shield instead of an axe, because I am in full Zerker gear. It was my first time on the map. I really wanted to survive and not have to keep repairing my armor, so the 2 extra heals were kind of needed. And the survivability over the damage was a lot nicer to have just for the first time on a new map. However, what was nice to see was even though the event failed, I could still kill the target and move on to the next episode, or the next part of this episode. Episode 5 was amazing. I loved the fact Keith returned in the episode and the issues which still remained between the commander and her given the events of the expansion. I also loved what the episode did with misleading the commander and the player a little leading into the next episode. I haven't raided since the first one came out and thus knew very little about the story with the White Mantle in the second raid, but it was nice to see this didn't really matter, especially in this episode and the following one. The fights here were just the right amount of difficulty given my gearing and being pure melee. It did take a while to figure out how to defeat some of them, having just encountered a few of the enemies in a Zerg. The story here was great. I loved seeing the altar and the shadow of the power here. The final episode, Confer's Stronghold, has to be my favorite in this chapter, not because of the fights, but for the story itself. I did play Guild Wars 1, and while I was never really heavily invested in the lore of the original games, seeing the ending of this chapter I felt both scared and excited. A Mersat. Oh my god, a Mersat! That twist for me, it was so unexpected. I never thought I would see a Mersat again. That just made the entire chapter right there. This zone is beautiful, from the lighting and tones displayed, from one end to the other, to the way it is just built. The moment I first landed in the zone, I wanted to explore and run the events, which I did in place of continuing the story. It took me a while to pull myself away from the events and grinding the levels and mastery points to get back to the story, but just the events, the map itself, all of it was so beautifully done that I just wanted to keep going and going and going on the map. And I actually ended up grinding out all 3 levels of the new masteries within the first couple hours on this map, which was kind of funny. I would have to say one of my favorite parts of the map is the way the currency is done. It tied getting ascended level crafting materials into the currency of the map. Even one part mined from those nodes ends up being currency before you can gather it in the main currency. I didn't know this, however, so I kept kind of destroying it for the currency, because before you get the magic gathering for the storyline, you have no way to get the map currency other than that way. So yeah, if I had known that was the only time I would be certain to get those bloodstone pieces, it would have been so much nicer and I would not have destroyed them. If I had one complaint, it doesn't actually have to do with the zone proper. It had to do with how easily I got through the 3 levels of the new masteries. One mastery point was very hard to get, the other wasn't, which was nice to see that there was a slight balance there between the two. By the time I was done with the map, I had all but 2 mastery points required to finish off the leveling, and I had all of the XP I needed for the final level. It's not a bad thing. It was just a little strange considering I remembered it being a lot more difficult and a bit more of a grind to get the other masteries in the expansion itself. Granted, this one only had 3 levels to it. I was a little happy to see the first one was easy so that I could actually run the events and get certain things from the events, and having them did help a lot when I went back into the story a little bit later.